I'm always basically talking about the same thing, but I don't want you to know that. So I give every talk a different title. Some of you probably have been catching on to that. Occasionally someone will say, "You're always saying the same thing." I go, "What do you keep coming for?" Say, "Oh, bad memory?" No, I don't say that. So this morning's Dharma talk is entitled Don't, another one of those don't talks. Don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Don't second that emotion. Don't second. When emotions come up, don't second it. Don't add anything to that. So you have a feeling about anything, I don't care what it is. As soon as the feeling arises and you do anything with that feeling, blame someone, blame yourself, tell a story around it, a fraction of a second long of a story about a feeling actually is, this is how, to use this kind of a way of communicating, this is how, what you're doing to your awareness. It doesn't make that sound. It's more like, and then we ruminate around it and think, why did that happen? There it goes again. Oh my gosh, here I am. I thought this was over with. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we all have our version of just a constant commentary around every damn thing that happens. And it's not about stopping that, even though I'm saying, when I say don't second that emotion, I know you can't help but do that. I can't help but do that. But if I say that to you, pardon me, if I say that to you, then that, if you're listening to me, and you have an interest in considering what I'm saying, then when emotions come up, you might go to that and you might just begin to notice the way in which you keep adding on to every damn thing you feel. Not to mention everything you think. What I say about thinking is, when you have a thought arise, just look at it. Don't elaborate on it. Don't add on to what is already there, because this is what causes the circularity of suffering. I like it, I don't like it, it's good, it's bad, here it comes, there it goes, here it comes, there it goes. It's called, the technical word for that in Sanskrit, not only in the Buddhist tradition, but in the Indian tradition, way back before Buddhism, is samsara, the wheel. The Tibetan word for that is korlo. The English word for that is, I'll get to that one. The Japanese word for that is enso. So there's a name. I don't know what Chinese is for circle, do you? No, I don't think we have anyone that knows that. Circular. And we're not about stopping the circularity. I'm recommending that you be about seeing the way your mind keeps spinning stories and tends to cover up or smother or change or propel even the constant commentary of our life, who we are, what we're doing, how we're failing, how we're getting ahead, now we're going behind, now we're getting ahead again, now we're falling behind. You noticed how that happens? You get your degree and you can't find a job. You find a job and it's a terrible group of people. Or you get fired. Or one of your legs falls off, one of your legs. Unlikely, but it's happened. That's serious. We'll laugh about that. Leg falls off. So as I said before, I'm always kind of talking about the same thing. What am I talking about all the time is awareness. Awareness. This is a sound. You don't know there's a sound unless there's an awareness, a perception that can receive that. What I'm saying, simply put, is just receive. If you add on to that at all, it's not that might not show up as information. Of course it does. And that's what the rest of the materialistic world does. It latches on to something because it needs a reference point for everything. You don't need a reference point. If you're in this room, you're ready to hear this. And I also say, don't believe anything that I say. I'm not here to propagandize particularly. But also, Don't disbelieve it. The two kinds of belief that are difficult, there's a third one, but the first two are you believe it, that's a problem. You either know it or you don't know it. But if you believe it, then there's something missing that you're not sure of, but you so much don't like not knowing that you'll just say, well, I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt, I believe it. That's true. Sometimes that gets so intense it becomes an opinion, and then you're pretty much screwed as far as your awareness goes. You may be born with a lot of intelligence, so you may be able to fool the people around you into thinking just because you have a PhD that you're smart. It doesn't mean that. It just means you're good at taking tests. You memorize, take a test. Memorize, take a test. And you're probably thinking, well, you're just jealous because you don't have a PhD. It's true. I'm jealous. I think somebody should give me one. Some things take a hell of a lot of work you can't get a PhD for. So don't second the emotion. What I'm saying is the emotion arises, and if you try out what I'm saying, just notice the way that the emotion happens, and we're immediately on that, like we're on it with trying to do something with it. We're trying to slow it down, trying to find the off switch, or if it's a really nice emotion, we're trying to fluff it up, puff it up, trying to how can we prolong that? This is not wrong, but you could say it's a very low level of operating as a living being, a little bit closer to the way animals operate, out of pain and pleasure. As human beings, we could be looking at our life by way of seeing how to really understand what this is. You don't know how you got here. I'm not saying you don't. There might be somebody that does. Would be very rare for anyone to actually think I'll be born. I think I'll be a human. I think I'll be born in Michigan. I think I'll be born in Traverse City. No. Detroit. No. Those are the two she had to pick from. And then the time ran out. She didn't pick. Time ran out, and then they just gave her Detroit. Remember that? Remember how disappointed you were there? Huh?
So how did this happen?
Yeah, how did this happen? I like that question. How did this happen? Yeah, I like that. So the idea is to basically investigate. This is what we do here. This room is for Dharma talks. They happen a couple times a week, and book studies. They happen 8 times a week for an hour and a half. And the rest of the time, if you're in here, you're either vacuuming, dusting, washing windows, cleaning the altar, or you're holding still and you're watching your mind. You're watching what we call the mind. You're watching what moves, what arises in consciousness in the 6 sense fields and their objects, sound, smells, taste, sights, thoughts. Sit down, hold still, watch what that does. You don't have to become a Buddhist to do that. I think it helps, but you don't have to do that. You can leave here and never come back, but I highly recommend that you take a little bit of time out of your life. Just do it for a year. Every day for a year, sit for an hour. Sit down, hold still, watch what your mind does when nothing else is moving, when you're holding everything as still as you can. Watch how you keep seconding the emotions. Seconding the thoughts. I'll second that. Isn't that parliamentary procedure? Have a second on that? No, everyone hates you. They hate your ideas, especially. But we do that. We sit down, hold still, and then I like it, I don't like it. I don't like that, I like that. Well, I must be meditating correctly because I'm feeling better. No, if you're meditating correctly, you might feel worse, because you're finally starting to look at the very part of your aspect of your consciousness you've been covering up. Very difficult to sit down, hold still, have all the senses open, in particular the eyes, for any length of time, which was like a couple of hours, and hide out from who you are. You're going to see it. You're going to see who you are, and it's probably not going to be comfortable. The downside is it's not comfortable. The upside is this is how you, to use the Western word for this. This is how you heal the illness of the mind, which is always at war with itself, always at war with its ideas, constant struggle going down way below the surface, way down in the shadows. This is going on. And you might have a surfacey appearance that is, yeah, everything's fine. How are you doing today? Yeah, pretty good. Actually, you're not, but they don't really want to know how you actually feel. Because if you turn around and say, I feel terrible. All I could think about last night was ending my life. A lot of people like that. How do I know? I've done that. That's how I know about it. So don't second the emotion. In other words, whatever arises, I don't care if it's a good emotion, a difficult emotion, a challenging emotion, or thought. You can say thought. My teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, referred to emotions as high-speed thoughts. I would go along with that a little bit, not totally, but a little bit. Sato.
Are there ways that we can kind of put the brakes on that seconding off the cushion? Because a lot of times for me, the emotion doesn't arise while I'm sitting looking at the wall.
Yeah.
It's when I'm out in the thick of things.
So if you do it, instead of doing it with the pushing or the pulling or the warlike thing or the military thing of, whatever it may be, lock it up or whatever kind of control thing, instead do it with the awareness. It will balance itself. Your natural state is already completely balanced and harmonious. Who you really fundamentally are, way below the surface of what is looking at this. It's already completely serene. This is called the Dharma Dhatu. Fancy word for it. So how can you, access that, or how can you begin to understand the very deep nature of your consciousness? Well, a start would be to acknowledge the very surface area of your consciousness, which is sense of touch, sense of smell, sense of seeing, sense of taste, sense of hearing, sense of seeing. Stay in those. And an actual protocol that I sometimes talk about and even teach as a meditation, the way to approach meditation or awareness practice is sit down and do it either meditation or post-meditation, either one, and alternate between a couple of the senses, not necessarily the mind, but between sounds and sense of touch, or between how gravity feels. You notice how if you go there, there's always the feeling of gravity. So there's always something pulling you down against something so you can stand up. Without gravity, there's a whole lot of things you aren't going to be able to do anymore, including keep your food down. I won't go into other details about your biology, but you can use your imagination to see how difficult it would be. You're not going to talk about that, are you?
About what?
Never. You were thinking about something else. That's all right. Go ahead. David.
Gravity. And a heavy feeling. What's the difference?
One's gravity, one's a heavy feeling. Gravity is a concept that is pointing to something. So even the feeling of gravity is not exactly gravity. It's maybe the heavy feeling would be more closely aligned with gravity. But if you're talking about a heavy feeling that is bringing about some kind of difficulty or sadness or lack of energy or something like that, then there might be other complications going on. But what I'm saying, I'm not exactly asking this, but don't try to figure that out. Because if you do, when you try to figure something out based on a materialistic approach, you actually cover up the very thing you're trying to explore. Because ego mind, self-centered mind, wants results, and it has very little patience based on its perception of what's actually happening. It might have more patience, the ego mind, the self-centered mind might have more patience if it actually spent a little bit of time seeing how very complicated the situation is that it is jumping to conclusions about. So I would say, if you have a heavy feeling, then go between the heavy feeling, gravity, or feeling, and sound, or possibly sight. You can to go from sight to sound, or from sight to feeling, you can first go to the easiest one, which is, and the most intimate one, which is how your clothes feel. How the heaviness or the warmth or a contrast cool area here and warm area here. And also just a feeling of how the drapery of your clothing, something we never, I wouldn't say we never think about, but rarely do we think about that. And that's totally your experience. That's your life. You're actually missing your life by blocking out the first 5 sense fields, unless you need them to drive down the road. And spending all this time up in our mind, ruminating about the value of things. Should I? Should I stop and get ice cream? I put on 2 pounds yesterday. I'm trying to help you here. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do some of that. Of course, we're not trying to clamp down. I'm not suggesting that. I'm saying, but there's a whole aspect of your life you're missing all the time. How this feels, how this smells, how this tastes, how your saliva tastes, for that matter. You notice how you never go to that sense of taste unless there's something to taste. Sense of taste is there all the time. There's tasting is going on all the time. You actually, your awareness is something like a grapefruit, about that size. And you can move it through all one of the, you can actually take a tour when you get up in the morning, sit on the edge of your bed or on your meditation cushion if you're a meditator, and just take a tour through your senses. Just go around and go to sense of touch, a sense of taste, sense of sight, sense of smell, sense of hearing, sense of thinking. Got to get them all. Took me a while to memorize those. And here, that's something we know all the time, but can you go through all your 6 senses like that? Zip? Can you do that? Do you spend much time going there? What, no questions? Yes?
What is an emotion?
I think that it's a dynamic in the consciousness. Technically, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know. But I only know it through awareness practice, through my own experience over many years. I would say it is a dynamic of consciousness that is not connected to someone who's feeling. There's no someone who's having the emotion. That's the illusion. When the emotion arises, you'll even say, I'm feeling this way, I'm feeling that way. Or I'm having this emotion, having that emotion. You'll actually leave the emotion and go to the identity, which is the ego, of the one who's having the emotion. That is unnecessary, extra, and causes further confusion. On the other hand, it's not about stopping that, it's about seeing it so that it can collapse on its own. If you see the complete masquerade that's going on there, you won't necessarily promote it. You won't necessarily go to war with it either. You just notice that there are times when you have strong feelings about something happening. And if you just watch, if you do nothing, those feelings will do whatever they arise through causes and conditions that you are not to blame for. And there's no one to blame for anything. If you think there is, you'll continue to suffer, and the people around you will continue to suffer. I'm not saying that Sally didn't kick Jerry. I'm not saying that it isn't obvious cause and effect. I'm saying the deep nature of that, which is often missed because we just are satisfied, we're blaming. Well, he did it. Well, who started this fight? Actually, it was started in a past lifetime between these two people when they were on a Roman battlefield. He killed him, and now she wants to kill her. Same consciousness, different, but the same. And I'm not here to promote reincarnation or rebirth. I don't believe in any of that stuff very much. So in the way in which I talk about it is not to say it's true or it's not true. I'm just saying if something is showing up that has that kind of energy or resonance to it, let's at least be respectful to what our experience is and at least look at it. The minute you come to judgment about anything, you shut down all research. Very difficult for even someone who's a scientist to, as they say, keep an open mind. And what we do here, we don't say keep an open mind. You won't hear me say that. You'll hear me say train your mind. over and over and over again. I'll say it again. Train your mind. What does that mean? First, find out what that is. You can't train a Jack Russell Terrier unless you can find them, and even then, it's going to be difficult. They're pretty much untrainable.
Can one find out what the mind is?
You find out what it isn't. It's not somebody. It's not something, some guy, some person who's having feelings or having. So you can't. I'm not saying you can't find out what it is, but I'm going to tell you, and then you know what I'm going to say. You can find out conceptually. It's not separate. You find out that whatever it is, we don't really know. It's like, can you find out what's happening in the Pleiades? Or can you find out what's happening on the dark side of the moon? I can tell you, the aliens are building huge McDonald's franchise. Not funny, I know. He's trying to laugh. The rest of you are trying not to laugh. I knew who I'm looking at. So again, don't second the emotion. And if you understand that, you'll see that you can't hardly help but do that. But when you do that, you'll notice that you're actually getting a good view of how that works in you personally. How when something happens, you start to have feelings about something, or maybe have feelings about something, you're not sure what the trigger was, but there that feeling is. It could be a feeling of sadness, depression, anxiety, could be happiness, could be anything. I would say just feel. Don't miss your life by adding on what it is or describing it in order to have some kind of extra reference point. The ego is always looking for a reference point. Ego, he, she, they always want to become better, more protected. This isn't something that can necessarily happen in one lifetime. And there are no guarantees you'll have any more. This might be the only one. They'll miss it. I'm not saying become a Buddhist. I'm not here to promote anything. But find out who you are, if you can do that. Maybe you can move to Vermont and start a cider mill. What else could you do? Get an orchard first. Huh?
Work for Ben and Jerry's.
We could work for Ben and Jerry's as a sampler. Sally, you have a question?
Yes. Do you think it would be better if there was a different greeting that people did instead of always saying, "How are you?"
I think "How are you" is fine.
You do?
Yeah.
You don't think it sort of gets you into the second, getting into the circular just right away?
Okay. So it's not about not getting into the circular. It is about seeing that that's what's happening. It's always about awareness. There's nothing here to accomplish. If you think there's something to accomplish, you'll continue to go in blind circles, which you can partially see because you're trying to stop them.
So there's no formula.
I don't think so. Well, Buddhism becomes as close as I've seen. I'm not saying there aren't spiritual paths I don't know about, of course. Mm-hmm. Some forms of shamanism, some forms of indigenous culture, someone who's practicing Islam, Christianity, Taoism. I'm sure there are areas in there that are totally genuine. So it's just a matter of having some kind of form that helps you just make deep discoveries about who this is, what is this, who is this. So it's always about awareness. Awareness will take you, to use the metaphor, deeper into that forest, that dark area between the trees. It'll take you. But conceptualization and plotting and planning and drawing maps probably won't help too much. They might cause you to sit off in a roadside park with your 1953 Chevy Malibu. No, I have Malibus then.
If an emotion arises and we notice a contrast maybe to how we felt a few seconds ago,
Yes.
is that seconding the emotion, noticing the contrast?
No. It's awareness. Seconding the emotion would be The emotion arises, let's say the somewhat when you get angry, there's a little bit of time, seconds maybe, before you even know it's anger. You just know there's an intensity, kind of a boiling feeling about something. Something may have triggered something. Sometimes it's some frustration about the actual situation, which is probably has some kind of a balance there. Maybe someone said they were going to do something, you were counting on that, you came and they didn't do it. And so now you have to take time that you don't have because you have other things you need to do and to do the very thing that someone else told you. So there's some anger. But then you don't really know that person couldn't do that because they were intercepted by a migraine or whatever, and their phone wasn't working. I mean, you can go, the causes and conditions that arise in any given situation. I mean, you let everybody off the hook, please. Let everybody off the hook, even if they just murdered someone next to you. Don't blame them. I mean, stop them, take the knife away, put them in a box, give them food. Don't let them out until you can find out that they on kind of a stabbing spree or something. But blame is something. It's more about the blamer than about someone's pain. You want to deal with it in a way where now you know they did that. That's more about the person wanting to feel kind of superior to the person who was caught. How would you like to be born someone who killed others? I sometimes say to everyone, and I'll say it to you right now. I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to give you two choices. You pick one immediately. So you can either be the murderer or the victim. Pick one. You have to pick one. Everybody got it? Okay, what is it?
Murderer.
Murderer? How about you? See? Simple. That shows you how completely balanced everything is happening. And so don't blame anyone. We're not saying, I mean, if you, like I think there's somebody, was it Kevin? I said one time in a talk, you may have to kill somebody. You don't know what you're going to be doing with your life. You may. We don't want that to happen. And then I think he had somebody make a pillow that said, you may have to kill somebody. And then he put a bloody knife on it. It's in the other room there. I hope people think that's humorous. Yes, sir.
Going deep, is that going back to the first emotion or the trigger?
It could. It could be. You could find the trigger that way. Actually, if you find the trigger, it might not look like a trigger. Quite often when people get really upset about something, it's because there's a whole upside down laundry hamper of all of the stuff you refuse to feel for the last 18 years, 15 lifetimes, however you want to look at time. You've stuffed. It's easier just to stuff it and forget, I'm just not going to think about that. And then something comes along that has the same kind of resonance, and suddenly all this, it's like all of this emotion resonates with the contemporary, the present moment's emotion. It's very similar. And suddenly, instead of responding to this on a level of 3, 4, 5, instead of, because of all the hidden stuff coming up and reacting, and suddenly you're in 19, 20, 24, 25, a high level of anger. The old saying is, or the old metaphor is mountain out of a molehill. Not that much going on. Intense overreaction. This is quite often how people get killed.
You said to let everyone off the hook. How can we not shut down our own anger that might be arising while...
Don't have to shut down in your anger. I've never said that. Have I ever said, shut down in your anger?
No, I'm asking how not to do that
Not to do what?
How do we not shut down our own anger while letting someone off the hook?
The way you let someone off the hook is you see that you have them on a hook. It's just about the way you deal with prejudice is to see that you're prejudiced. You get rid of prejudice and you're just hiding the prejudice. You can't get rid of prejudice. Conditioned. If someone says, I'm not prejudiced, they don't know it, but they're lying to you. We all have some kind of prejudice going on. How do I know? I'm very prejudiced, but I keep it right in front of me all the time, so that I don't believe my thought patterns about something. The thought patterns are conditioned in. You don't have to believe anything I say, and I prefer, if I have any say so about it, walk out of here and forget everything I said. That might give you an idea of what my attitude is about this. Forget everything. But if something that's been said or discussed either by me or other people tends to resonate with you, then do some investigating. One of the best ways to investigate anything, sit down, hold still, watch what continues to move, because that's the part of the mind that we call self-deception. More?
In that situation you described earlier where we get angry because someone doesn't do something they said they were going to do.
Yes.
But maybe they had a migraine.
Yes.
What would it look like to feel that anger that's arising but still let them off the hook?
You might still be angry. You might still be irritated with them. And if you were to meet them right at that time, if they were to come walking around the corner, they would never know it. Because you've taken complete, the fancy word is responsibility for your emotions. You're not putting your emotions off on somebody else. I'm feeling this way because of you. Be your emotions. Live your life. Don't miss your life. Be genuine. You see what I'm saying a little bit?
I'm just confused how you can be angry and have someone not know it.
I'm really pissed off at you. Can you tell? For asking me such a stupid question. I'm not saying that a person with a lot of insight and a lot of clarity about themselves will know they'll know what you're doing. They'll know that you're blaming, but they'll also be able to see that you're not pointing a finger. They'll see it because they have some clarity around what's happening. You might have more clarity around what's happening with you than you do at that particular time. And again, I have to go back to the beginning. It's not about stopping being angry or stopping it. It's about the awareness around it, because the force of karma, the force of your life, is so powerful that what's been set in motion at your birth is probably going to continue pretty much in the same way. What you can do about it is be more aware of what it is. Don't miss your life. Be genuine. Stop trying to be somebody else. Be who you are. Good luck. Without an awareness practice, I don't know how you're going to do it, because the nooks and crannies and everything that are out there for all kinds of hidden things to go into are innumerable. One of the best ways to do this is rededicate yourself to help others. Put others before yourself. Even the ones who are ungrateful, especially those, yes.
Can we practice being teachable?
So the idea with being teachable is to put everything on receive. So in other words, with all of your sense fields, there's sound, that's an object of sense. So it comes through the ear, sense of seeing, very simple color, shapes, textures, dimensions, and so on. So insofar as you can just receive, that includes the area of the mind or perception. And so the teachable part is to notice the way you keep shutting things out. So actually, notice the way you're refusing that. That's how you do it. You don't try to be more open. Trying to be more open is a very sly, subtle trick, you could say, of ego. Trying to be more open. Oh, I'm so much more open now than I used to be. Lies. Someone bragging about their openness. I'm not saying you might not notice some contrast. Gee, I don't seem to be quite so antagonistic with people I disagree with. I'm not saying that. But don't jump away from that into some kind of a merit badge for yourself. You don't need it. If you need to feel better, come and talk to me and I'll compliment you. I'll think of something. Yes.
Lauren from South Carolina has a question. Actually, two questions. Are we adding by labeling an emotion to our thoughts? And can we have thoughts without doing this?
Yes, and yes. And no, and no. That's a special answer just for you, Lauren. Yes and no. There are always, if you took either one of those directions, there's always situations where one is going to be stronger than the other, and then it'll go the other way. It's very hard to find a reference point where you're always where it's all settled. Well, now I know, about finally, after all this work, now I know. That's like someone who may think that once you're realized or you're enlightened, that your work is over with. That's actually probably when it begins. Up until that time, you've been serving yourself. And if you are realized, you begin serving. There isn't anything you don't serve. As Bob Dylan said in his song, you may have to serve somebody, or you're going to have to serve somebody. Very insightful, Gemini. Yes?
This is a question from Joseph, who's on the Ohio Turnpike. Tanya? He asks,
What are you doing there?
what do we do when we recognize the anger that seems to continually arise when I am around certain particular individuals? Abrazos.
Yeah. It's just a function of karma. I mean, I have a different everybody I meet, I have different emotions around. Positive, negative, neutral. I don't believe them. I don't disbelieve them. I don't do anything with them. I certainly don't try to get rid of my feelings. It's intense. The more you see through the pretense and the subterfuge and the masquerade that the ego is involved with, and can see that there's no one really there. There is no solid being that you're calling me or I or the personal pronouns are referring to empty space. Let's find out. If you do that, then you're liberated. What is liberated? Everything's liberated. All the emotions are self-liberated. Anger is self-liberated. It's liberated. So anger may come, may go. You're not too concerned with it. What are you doing? Saving all beings. You're trying to find a way to be at the service of others with their permission. I'm not trying to say that if you see somebody using a bunch of drugs, you have the right to go in and tell them anything about it. You could say, how's it going? And they might say, terrible, can't you see? I said, well, I'm just asking you, is there anything I can do for you? No, mind your own business. You should mind your own business. Shoto.
What is it to be taught in these teachings?
Pardon me?
What is it to be taught in these teachings?
You teach yourself. I mean, sure, I'm teaching you, or endeavoring to, but really, in order for you to understand, you're going to have to do it. You have to take what's being said here. Don't add, don't subtract, don't divide. Don't support any of that. And how do you do that? You do it by looking at it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I don't think so.
Well, get busy.
How can we receive that when...
What did I just say? What did I just say?
I don't know.
I say get busy.
What does it look like to get busy?
You begin to see the way you keep pushing on your world, pulling on your world, and shutting down on your world. And all I do is suggest it. I mean, that's why I say I'm always saying the same thing. Everything's dependently arisen. There's no solid separate beings anywhere. You're already doing it. I mean, you're here, you're dedicated to this, you're dedicated to me, as far as I can tell, as a teacher. You come in here and you sit, you practice, you work in this community, you're part of the monastery, you're lay ordained, you're doing just about everything, more than most people are doing. I'm not saying you couldn't completely do something else and still have a lot of insight arise around what your life is about. Of course you could. You could do it in another spiritual path. This is Buddhism, or this person for sure doesn't have any corner on the truth. So just continue to do what you're doing. But we teach ourselves. You know, I'm not saying we run off and I'm just going to be my own teacher. I don't mean that. I'm saying stay with whatever teaching is supporting you and continue to reflect on it, think about it. It's a little bit different with each person's personality. Some people are nowhere, they're not going to do this. And I know, I don't mind, you can do something else. But those who come here to do this, then there's some kind of agreement that, yep, it looks like you can probably help me here. I'm saying this is what the person might say. That's what I thought when I met my first teacher. I thought, I don't know exactly what I thought. Oh my God, I met somebody that can see right through me. That's what I felt when I met him. And it was a feeling of happiness and terror at the same time, because I knew I needed that kind of help, but I was terrified that somebody was going to see how nuts I was. Yes.
A question from Drew in Florida.
Drew.
He asks, can awareness deepen the suffering you are experiencing even when on the Zafu?
More than likely. Should we stop? I'll take one more question from David.
Is it possible to second receive?
How do you mean?
Like if you're talking about you have an emotion and then you second it, receiving, is there such a thing as second receiving?
That sounds like looking for a credential. Not you, but yeah, to try to don't do anything with anything. If you have, don't do anything unless you have to. It's a highly profound teaching I invented a few weeks ago. Because quite often, if you're doing things you don't have to do, that means you're functioning away in the world out of guesswork. But if you sit down, hold still, don't do anything unless you have to, then the thing you really need to do will show up. Because of what? Why is it going to show up? Because of patience. Because you're not jumping to conclusions out of your self-centered ego, out of hope and fear and, oh my God, what's going to happen? We better do this now. We don't do it now. I say, don't do anything unless you have to. And then if it comes up where I have to do that, that's why I say, and other teachers say, it's choiceless. If you're really operating out of your understanding, out of your wisdom, it's choiceless. There are no decisions. I rarely make any decisions. Sometimes between pistachio and, what's that other one? Butter pecan. Those are both nuts, aren't they? Yeah. Anyone else? Anyone that hasn't asked a question? Anyone that's asked too many questions? Are we going to go into the next segment of the?
We just have a couple minutes to transition.
Oh, okay. So I'm good. Thank you so much for coming.
We'll stand and dedicate the merit that's in the back of our yellow chant books. And I'd like to remind everybody we do have donation boxes out in the hallway. We also accept financial support from you through PayPal, debit and credit cards, and cash and checks in the mail. 33 Anderson Court, Battle Creek, Michigan, 49017. Thank you very much.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's ways. Ji-o-san shi-shi-fu, shi-son bu-sa-mo-ko-sa, mo-ko-ho-ja-ho-ro-mi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita.
O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.